You're live.
Hey everybody, I would like to thank you for joining us for the third day of the second week of the second phase of Julian Assange's court trial.
That's a
I am
mouthful,
going.
man.
Oh, I'm echoing somewhere.
No, I said that's a mouthful. The
No,
second.
I can hear myself on yours.
Hold on.
It is.
Let me make sure. Okay, we're good. Do the counts. You're good.
Bear with us for the technical issues. Good, cool. So again, this is the third day of the second week of the second round of Julian Assange's extraordinary rendition hearing. Today is day 7. Um, Hey Josh, I can hear myself through yours.
You should be able to. I'm on my headset.
There we go. I fixed it. Sorry. I was hearing me through me. Okay, so I'm going to start off by reading the at Defense Assange. This is day 7, Julian Assange's extraordinary rendition hearing. We are expecting testimony from John Goetz, a Der Spiegel journalist who worked with WikiLeaks in 2010, and Daniel Ellsberg, the Pentagon Papers whistleblower. Yesterday's report on testimony from the defense attorney Eric Lewis and from the defense's attorney Eric Lewis and Thomas Durkin testifying about Trump's politicalization and prosecution and about the conditions Julian will face in U.S. detention. If Goetz's testimony does not take too long, either the defense will read other statements in court or we'll get to spend some time with Julian. Goetz worked for Der Spiegel and was reporting on the Iraq and Afghanistan war logs, traveled to London in June 2010.
You're so butchering that name.
How should I pronounce it? I'm sorry.
I think it's goats.
Goetz? Okay.
Something like that. It's not Goetz, that's for sure.
I was saying like poets with a G. Goetz worked for Der Spiegel and reported on Iraq and Afghanistan, traveling to London in 2010 to meet with Assange, the New York Times, The Guardian, the partners working on the Afghan war diaries. Goetz, it is unheard of that you'd work with a competing media outlet. Now it is far more common, but at this time, very unique. But at this time, it was very unique. I'm assuming this was a line of questioning from the prosecution, but I'm not entirely sure. What did the Afghan war logs? A fascinating firsthand witness diary of what was happening in the Afghan war. It means that some of it was inaccurate because people didn't know what they were seeing, but nonetheless interesting to get that perspective. Goetz talking about the assassination teams in Afghanistan, similar to Operation Phoenix. You can read through the war logs and follow their activities. I remember being annoyed at the time by the consistent reminders from Assange to be secure, to keep using encrypted apps, and an encrypted phone. At the time, I thought it was paranoia and crazy, but it became a regular journalistic practice. Assange's sensitivity about the material. He was very concerned with the technical aspects of trying to find the names in the massive collection of documents. The first time anyone was dealing with this many, and I mean tens of thousands of documents. He was very concerned about the technical ways of finding these names so that we could redact them, so they wouldn't be published, so they wouldn't be harmed. The rest of the team also concerned about these types of redactions. The rest of the team was also concerned about these types of redactions. Interviewed Mr. Assange about harm minimization before publication, published the results, where he describes the harm minimization process designed to protect innocents from being harmed. Partners agreed to talk to the White House ahead of time, sent to the New York Times because they already had a team in Washington. We sent a delegation. Eric Schmidt emailed Goetz right after the email. The White House asked for redactions. They passed on that WikiLeaks would not publish 15,000 documents and asked for technical advice on redacting. Those 15,000 were not published, but the rest of the Afghanistan war logs were, and the stories were published about them. Who published first? There was a technical glitch, and my memory is that Der Spiegel published first and WikiLeaks published later. I'm not sure about The Guardian and the New York Times, but I think we all published before WikiLeaks. They were maybe an hour or an hour and a half. Is it right that names got through the harm minimization net and were not redacted? Not to my knowledge. I don't know of that. I would need to see an example. Well, the logs are still public. Aware of any names that got through the net? Goat says, no, I'm not. Now talking about the Iraq war logs, Goat's not as involved as he was on the Afghan. Will you be able, are you able to tell us if harm minimization processes changed or stayed the same? He replied, developed over time. With the Iraq war logs, WikiLeaks kind of overshot and ended up redacting more than the Defense Department themselves did. Turns out that there were some Iraq war logs that had already been released under a FOIA, and comparing them to the WikiLeaks versions were more redacted. I got an email at the time from David Lay that the Iraq publication would be delayed because WikiLeaks was taking so long to redact. Talking to Goat's investigations into Khalib, who has been investigating since 2005 and 6. He had been kidnapped in Macedonia, rendered to Afghanistan, and tortured. The High European Court confirmed this, but it was not known as true back in 2005. Goats found the CIA kidnappers who forced Khalid into a plane and sodomized him, and then sent him to a military unit in Afghanistan.
What the
Tracked them down. Right? That's brutal. I was just wondering if anyone has anything about that, and about if anyone in that situation has been held criminally liable for sodomizing this man.
Jesus Christ, dude. Who's
and sent him?
God damn it!
Right. They tracked them down in the U.S. and talked to them. And after we broadcasted our story about it, and the Munich state prosecutor issued a warrant for the arrest of the 3 CIA members who kidnapped him, the first time that this has been done. Mark Summers from the defense, so presumably the perpetrators of this war crime were brought to justice.
I'm guessing no.
Right. Goats replies, well, the arrest warrant, it turns out, was never actually issued to the U.S. And when I saw the State Department cables, I saw that the U.S. had pressured Germany to make the arrest warrant in a jurisdiction where the perpetrators did not live. What kind of pressure? Do you have a quote? But the U.S. said something like there would be serious repercussions if this isn't done. Process of publication from the State Department cables, 2 phases. The initial partners who had access to everything, then WikiLeaks, who worked with the media in various countries to find out what was newsworthy there. We didn't all know, e.g., what was newsworthy in Toluncia. Probably butchered that country name. After the initial publishing, media partners expanded to local media. The important part of the agreement with WikiLeaks was always keeping material very secure. Secure methods of communication at the time felt exaggerated, but probably by the time of the cables, I had more understanding of that. And this, I believe, is back to the defense team. How robust would you describe the redactions? Well, I don't know of anyone being harmed by them. Okay. Up until 2011, was there a process for redacting taking place? Of course, media partners would read through and flag things for redactions and send to WikiLeaks. We got a conference call from the State Department, PJ Crowley, and others. They began to give us numbers of documents that they were concerned about. We were writing down the document numbers, and we were quickly looking them up, and in many ways quite interested to know which documents they were concerned about. Of course, we looked at these documents for the names that needed to be redacted or anything like that. The defense continues to question, was there a redaction on the documents? What was there redaction on the docs the State Department mentioned? Yes, of course there were. We passed them to WikiLeaks. It was interesting. On the call, they started to give us document numbers, then realized they were kind of telling us what was interesting and didn't want to. They were not pointing out names at this point. They were only pointing out what was politically sensitive. Able to talk about the 2011 cables without redactions being published if asked? He responds, yes. The defense. At the heart of this is a book by two Guardian authors. The prosecution objects, saying that this isn't in the witness statement. Summers for defense. It clearly is. Reads the statement where it's mentioned. A book by David Ley and Luke Harding, where the password was mentioned. Media partners, did it say anything as a coercive group, or were there problems? Cohesive group, or were there problems? Conflicts began with the end of the Afghan docs, but stayed together as media partners. Prosecution objects over questioning about password leading to unredacted cables. Summers said, I just want the court to be aware if there are questions about how this happened. This is the witness to ask them to. End of defense questioning. James Lewis, prosecutor QC, crosses examines for the prosecution. Lewis, am I right? You're saying that there were redactions made to protect the informants and names? Goetz says yes, but do you accept that in late August, early September 2011, that unredacted cables were published by WikiLeaks? Well, the process started in February. WikiLeaks published what it was already publishing on the Cryptome. Unredacted cables, some marked protect, were published on the internet by WikiLeaks in August. I don't think you have the timing right. Series of events started with the password in February. I could explain it. The series of mirroring online and a number of websites published the material. Mainly on Cryptome, known as a leak site. Prosecutor. Maybe I could help you with your chronology. A number of unredacted cables published before they were in Cryptome. The prosecutor. On or about 29 August, WikiLeaks published more than half of Cablegate materials. Statement noted the decision was taken in accordance with the WikiLeaks commitment to maximize political unheard. So that's a week or so before the Cryptome published on the 1st of September. Julian speaks from the doc to correct the prosecution. It's political impact, not political input. The prosecution said he misread. So I'm going to read that statement again, just so everyone can kind of get the full context of it. The prosecution said, on or about 29 August, WikiLeaks published more than half of the Cablegate materials. A statement noted the decision was taken in accordance with the WikiLeaks commitment to maximize political impact. So that's a week or so before the Cryptome publication. Julian speaks from the doc, correcting the prosecution that it's impact, not input. Prior to the Cryptome release, password published by David Ley's book, do you accept that WikiLeaks published unredacted cables with the names of sources? Goetz says, if you read statement, they express alarm about these releases, but I do not know if the names were in there. Do you have an example? So you're talking about an unforeseen event published before Cryptome by WikiLeaks. Well, they weren't published before. Small section published by partners before, then published more after Cryptome. Prosecutor Lewis, we're not talking about the collaboration. before late August 2011. One period of collaboration and redaction in late August, early September. The government's position is that they were dumped. Goes, I'm a real live witness to it. WikiLeaks invested a lot of money and staff to another year of rollout on this. They were going to spend another year on local stories around the world. But what I observed is the organization had a major effort to continue the rollout and continued to have control over the documents. And I was in contact with the person in charge of the media contacts at the time, and know she was spending her time doing that instead of working on bigger stories. Prosecutor Lewis, whatever the intent, we know that by early September, WikiLeaks published the full unredacted cables. They were republished. They republished what was in the Cryptome. Prosecutor Lewis reads from a media statement. So, am I right that Der Spiegel deplored decision by WikiLeaks to publish unredacted? Yes, Der Spiegel signed Der Spiegel signed on that statement. I should note I wasn't working with Der Spiegel at the time. And what happened with the password from David Lay's book and so on was not known at the time of the statement. They signed on to that statement without knowing the chain of events. You were sent an email that WikiLeaks redacted 15,000 documents. From Eric Schmidt at the New York Times, our main contact for the operation delegation, went to the White House, and this email was the report we got right after they came back. Do you know if those names were redacted or not? And then this is back to Goetz. Yes, Eric Schmidt says in the email they passed on to the White House that WikiLeaks would not publish the 15,000 documents and entertain suggestions from the White House to redact. I recall being told by Schmidt that was viewed by derision in the White House. Prosecutor Lewis says, but am I right that these documents were published unredacted in early September? No, this is about Afghanistan. Prosecutor Lewis, am I not right that the unredacted documents were published in full? Goetz says, this email is about the Afghanistan war docs. The unredacted in early September were the State Department cables. Prosecutor, forget the date. Has WikiLeaks ever published these 15,000 documents? Not that I know of. I would be interested to know if they are. I know there are internal conflicts and some people left WikiLeaks. Prosecutor, evidence from others that they found Julian Assange thoughtful, humorous, and energetic. Would you agree? Yes, his mother describes him as having a wonderful sense of humor. Agreed? Sure, I guess. I never thought much of that, but sure, he had one. And I think this is Prosecutor Lewis again. His mother described him as fun, funny, witty, adventurous, extraordinarily selfless father. Do you agree? I haven't seen, and this goes back to Goetz, I haven't seen him with his children. I cannot testify about that. Cross-examination. End of cross-examination. Mark Summers will talk with Julian for 10 minutes, recess back after that. That was 21 minutes ago. So I'm going to drop this in the chat here so everyone can kind of scroll through and look at it. And again, I apologize to everybody. I'm terribly dyslexic, and this is super early. So if I'm stuttering over words, thanks for bearing with me through all this. If you guys have any questions, please let me know. I can try to help provide some context for all this if anyone has anything they're not sure about. But I am going to hop over and see where Kevin is at right now. The good Kevin Costola. So I'm trying to find out where his recess starts on here. Well, I'll just stay on the Assange defense until I get caught up then. So, as of 9 minutes ago, court is back in session. Mark Summers is re-examining of John Goetz for the defense. And this is Summers speaking. The end of 2010 to August 2011, cables were published in redacted form. Are you aware of any cables getting into the public domain containing sensitive names despite the redaction process? No, it was a very rigorous redaction process, and as far as I know, no names came out. The rigorous redaction and this is going back to Summers. The rigorous redaction process included a conversation at which you were present, and then Goetz replies yes, and David Ley was present. Goetz replies yes. This is defense attorney Summers. Help us specifically with the cables. Were they all classified or some unclassified? Goetz replies, some were not classified. This is Summers again, I believe. And you have been told some containing the heading strictly protect. Did that imply? What did that imply when you saw it on the cables? Goetz replies that it was of particular importance and that they stayed secure. It wasn't about the names, it was about the political nature of the documents. The prosecution raises an objection, says that it is the names that were marked strictly protected, not the cables. The defense asks Goetz, were the names marked strictly protected or the marking applied to the cable? In my memory, Goetz says, it referred to the cable. Goetz continues, as an example, I'm thinking of one young German who went to the embassy. My memory isn't that it was the name, but it was 10 years ago. And I believe this goes back to Summers. Last week of August, are you aware that the cables released at the time by WikiLeaks were classified or unclassified? As far as I understand, it was unclassified documents. Defense to judge. We have this on evidence, ma'am. Prosecution interrupts. So do we. Known journalist. I think this is Summers asking Goetz. Do you know journalist Kevin Dillingham? Goetz replies, I know of him. Summers states, reputable journalist. Goetz replies again, I believe he was fired for talking to the CIA before reporting, which that should be what happens to everyone that talks to the CIA before they report. I got 3 more tweets for Assange defense, and I will hop over to someone else. Are you in a position, and this is Summers asking, are you in a position to comment on the release of cables containing sensitive names? Goetz replies, as far as I know, the issue of harm was central in the Chelsea Manning trial. I do not know of any instance of harm that was caused by the releases. There may have been fear about what would happen, but they were worried. But what they were worried about didn't happen. And this again is Summers. The releases of the documents in August 2011 were unclassified or classified, and Goetz responds with unclassified. So I'm going to pull up another thread here real quick. I just got to get to the bottom of them. So I'm going to pick up in Summers' questioning of Lewis. This was from 10 minutes ago, so about when court got back into session. Summers, 2010 to August 2011, when cables were published in redacted form. Did any sensitive names get through? Goetz replies, not as far as I know. Summers asked, did the decision involve Julian Assange? Goetz replies, yes. There was about another year on the project. Summers says, were the cables classified? Goetz replies, no, they were labeled strictly protect. The ones labeled strictly protect was not about the names, it was referring to the whole cable as far as I remember. Summers, the cables released the week before the whole batch were released. Were they classified? Goetz says unclassified. Summers says the LA Times was critical of that release. Which, fuck the LA Times. Goetz says that journalist was fired for discussing his stories with the CIA. Goetz says the issue of harm was dealt with in the Manning trial, and I've seen no evidence, only media reports about the fear of harm. Summers states on 2 September classified unredacted cables. Goaz states Krypton published first. It is an important website for journalists and for others, but not as significant. So let me see. We're caught up on Mary Kostakidis, so I will send that into the chat for everybody. And again, if you guys have any questions, please let me know. I'm popping into the chat between switches here, so if you have anything, just throw an @action for Assange on it, and I should be able to see it pretty easy. Or Slow News Day if you're in the Slow News Day chat. So I'm going to jump over here to One Passarelli and see if we can pick up where trial picked back up again. So let me scroll through. So this is 13 minutes ago, so about when court picked back up. And again, I'm over on Juan Passarelli's thread. So let me throw that in here. And Fitzgerald says, let's talk about the period when the cables were being published in redacted form. Were there any names published? Goetz says, no. There was a rigorous process of redacting that WikiLeaks put in place. They had a year of publication planned on all countries of the world. Fitzgerald, were any cables classified? Goetz says, no. Fitzgerald says, what does strictly protect mean? Were the names marked strictly protect? Again, Goetz says, I remember that this was for the cable, not for the names. Fitzgerald says, were the cables marked strictly protect during the time of controlled release? Goetz says, yes. Fitzgerald, in August, the week prior to all cables being published by Krypton, were the cables released by WikiLeaks marked classified or unclassified? Goetz says, I believe they were marked unclassified. Fitzgerald says, sorry, I was just reloading here. Fitzgerald says, are you aware of anyone who has been harmed by the publication of these documents? Goetz says, I believe this was all covered in the Manning trial, where it was concluded by the government that no one was harmed in these publications. Goetz continues, Krypton published the unredacted cables first. I do not think that there is any dispute on this. WikiLeaks just republished it. I was a witness Assange's attempts to try. Okay, I was a witness to Assange's attempts to try to make sure that the unredacted material wouldn't go out. Sorry, that one was grammatically weird. Jennifer Robinson is going to give evidence next. So that was as of a second or two ago. So let me drop this link in chat for everybody. And then I'm going to hop over and check out Mohammed Almazy's thread real quick. So he is back about 20 minutes or so ago. So I'm going to hold off on his a bit until he gets that a little more populated. I'm going to hop over here to Kevin Gastola's and see where he's at. It looks like Kevin's last tweet is lead prosecutor James Lewis abandoned cross-examining Goetz, recognizing that Goetz is so knowledgeable about what happened with the releases. He chose to spend far less time with him than other witnesses. And this was as of 19 minutes ago, so this was about the time the court went into recess. And I think this is important as we wait for these threads to populate more here. Because Lewis, if you remember yesterday or Monday, was literally screaming, had to apologize because he was screaming so much at the judge, specifically because he felt like they weren't given enough time. So for him to go from Monday's childish outbursts, literally trying to reprimand the judge about how he only got 4 hours, he turns this around then. Questions the guy for 20 minutes, and probably more than 20 minutes, but questions him for a little bit and then just turns it back over to the defense. And we know that during this trial, or during this day in particular, we're waiting on Daniel Ellsberg, who is over in the West Coast of the US. So there may be a period here where the defense actually does get to meet with Julian while they wait for that testimony. But as Juan Passarelli says, Jennifer Robinson is going to give evidence next. So we're going to hang out to see what happens there. And I'm just refreshing everybody. Bear with me just a second, guys. So back over to @Defense Assange. I don't want to reread too much of the same stuff. Where's the question here? Okay, and this is as of 6 minutes ago. The article in September following WikiLeaks' republication confirms the earlier process of redactions, recounts a chain of events from the password in the book. Even the article recognized that Cryptome published the cables first. Goetz says, yes, Cryptome published first, and I don't think there's any dispute about that. Goetz continues, I also know the various people who were involved at the time. I know that WikiLeaks made efforts to stop this Diefredtag article from being published because it made people aware of how to get the unredacted cables. The defense wants to read out our witness statement on El-Masuri. The prosecution objects, saying that it is not accepted as evidence. Mr. El-Masuri has nothing to do with the charges, but the defense wishes to give it prejudice in and not proper use of court's time. And then the Assange defense says, FYI, we can share what we expect Mrs. Robertson's testimony to be today. Expected to testify about an offer of a pardon. So and this is just guessing, I don't know for sure what she's going to testify about, but if you think back to what Kim.com has released and what he has said, this testimony here by Jennifer Robinson may include the situation between Kim.com, Dana Rohrabacher, and Donald Trump, where Dana Rohrabacher was sent as essentially a liaison to Julian at the behest of Donald Trump while he was a sitting congressperson, to essentially tell Julian that you will get a pardon if you say it was Seth Rich that released the cables. This was a few months after an Icelandic interview that Julian did, where he made sure to state that it was no state actor that gave him the 2016 cables, and that it was, and didn't state the name of the person who did it, but did offer a $20,000 reward for anyone with information about the death of Seth Rich. So I hope that's what this is in regards to, so we can maybe get a little bit more clarification on that situation. But the defense and prosecution are arguing over whether El-Masuri's statements can be read in court, whether it is relevant or not, and whether it is admissible. The prosecution says, if you want to waste half an hour, Mr. Summers can read it. I think it's funny that Lewis is bitching about people wasting time. This is literally the man that every witness spends 2 hours trying to discredit them, and then another 2 hours talking in circles around them, trying to confuse them and make them frustrated. And he concedes a whole bunch of time and then is complaining that the defense is going to use it to represent the case properly.
Ain't this the guy who couldn't make it home that one night? And
Yep. This was the guy that on Thursday morning last week woke up in the wrong house.
Cocaine's a hell of a drug.
Yeah, man. If I've ever woken up in the wrong house, it's definitely not because I was preparing for one of the biggest court trials in human history.
Right?
Like, but to hop back in here, um, the prosecution is still attempting to suppress the statement on El Masuri. He was the victim of CIA rendition and torture. Background here. And this is an ACLU article. I will pull it up and hopefully have time to go through it. If not, we will put it on a vigil, maybe tonight, maybe on Saturday, just all depends. Mon Passarelli's has not been updated yet. So let me, cool. I'm going to step away from the camera for a second as everything fills back up here, but I will be back in just a minute. I don't know if you want to throw a blank screen up real quick or something, Josh, but I will be right back.
I'll throw up the timer or the timer
Cool.
screen.
Cool.
Fun times. All right, you're back.
Hello, everybody. So I'm going to pick up here. It looks like we are still in a bit of a delay, but Kevin Gostola, as of 5 minutes ago, referring to Lewis's talking about the cables. Lewis insists that the names in the cables had a strictly protected label. Goaz, to the defense, said he had no recollection of that. He recalled that the label was for the entire cable, and the entire document itself. And then he posts an article from the LA Times that was referred to in court, so I'm going to drop that in the chat box for everybody. And Ellsberg is going to be testifying today. I do see that question in chat. He is on the East Coast of the United States, and currently it is breaking like 3 in the morning there. Right, Josh? It's about 3.
Yeah, it's almost 4.
Almost 4. So let me come through and refresh some threads. So Mary Kostakidis, as of 4 minutes ago, said a disagreement about the admissibility of El-Masri's statements. The judge asked Lewis to think about it, and that she wants just a short summary. Summers wants to read the statement. I gather that there are more than one of these where the witness is not appearing but has a statement prepared. And then Mary says, geez, I just saw that I've been referring to El-Masri as El-Nasri, and you'll have to forgive me because she is very jet-lagged. We do forgive you, Mary. We appreciate you being awake at this heinous hour covering this court case right now. I'm going to tweet out that ACLU article, and I may just dig into this for a minute while we wait for some more stuff to be populated here, because as this was 15 or about 12 minutes ago, Mo said, now there is a discussion about reading publicly a statement from a CIA torture and rendition victim, Mr. El-Masri, and other potential statements. Mr. Lewis thinks it's inappropriate. The judge says the USG did not contest the statement, and they are on break until 12:30. So while we are on break, can I send you this article to pull up, Josh? I don't know what I can send it to you on right now. If not, I can just read through it.
Just read through it.
Okay. And this is from the ACLU.org. I'm going to drop this into the chat for everybody. And again, I would like to thank everybody for joining us here at this ridiculously early hour. From last vigil to now, I've managed to get successfully about 3.5 hours of sleep. So just bear with me as I'm trying to read through all this. This article on the ACLU.org says a new CIA torture document confirmed chilling details of Khaled El-Masri's ordeal. And this was published June 17th, 2016. After being mistakenly abducted in Macedonia and detained in a secret CIA prison in Afghanistan, Al-Khalib El-Masri told his interrogators that his ongoing detention was like a Kafka novel. A cable to the CIA headquarters reported that El-Masri said he could not possibly prove his innocence because he did not know what he was being charged with. Much has been reported on this tragic case of mistaken identity at the hands of the CIA, but this week additional details on El-Masri's case emerged when the CIA released a batch of documents in response to the ACLU's Freedom of Information Act lawsuit. Among many disturbing details relating to the CIA's post-9/11 torture and rendition program was a revealing investigation carried out by the CIA's Inspector General onto the rendition and torture of El-Masri, an innocent German citizen who was disappeared, detained, and abused by the CIA for over 4 months in early 2004. The ACLU now represents El-Masri in a pending case against the U.S. before the Inter-American Commission on Human Rights. And just remember, this was published June 17th, 2016. So I do not know how this case is going, but I'm sure that we can follow up and figure it out. The investigation makes clear that el-Masri's unlawful rendition and detention were rife with neglect, abuse, and incompetence, reaching the highest levels of the CIA. And depending on the time frame, I think early 2004 was the guy that Kevin Gostola was talking about yesterday. Let me see if I can find a name. We talked about him on the vigil last night too. I just can't remember the gentleman's name, so bear with me. Panetta, I want to say. Let me double check.
I think so.
I think so, because I think he was 2004 to like 2014 or something, maybe. He may have been 2008 to 2014. Either way, I think it's fair to say I have no idea who the CIA director was then. But back to the article. It was revealed that even as the CIA quickly concluded he was not a terrorist, two CIA officers who had been involved in his rendition justified his continued detention despite the diminishing rationale by insisting that they knew he was bad. So, all it takes for you to be disappeared at a CIA black site is being bad. So don't be bad, because they know. The document also confirms that the former CIA director, there it is, George Tenet, was informed about the January 2004 rendition shortly after it happened, and then again in late April 2004. Yet el-Masri was not freed and allowed to return to his family in Germany until May of that year, after former National Security Advisor Condoleezza Rice ordered it. The CIA did not inform Congress of the mistaken rendition until after his repatriation, and after it learned that he had retained an attorney. The report confirms that the grueling psychological torture of el-Masri was subjected to, along with the CIA's blatant disregard for his physical and mental health while in custody. In protest of his wrongful detention, el-Masri went on a hunger strike and lost 50 pounds. The CIA psychologist described him as openly tearful and speechless, and suffering from feelings of helplessness, hopelessness, and wishing he was dead. Another psychologist confirmed the intensity of his depression, loneliness, hopelessness, and anger. The source of his deteriorating mental health, the psychologist believed, was the unknown status of his case and the uncertain length of his detention, complicated by the lack of interaction with agency personnel. The psychologist recommended releasing him. No shit, if you're tortured, you probably just shouldn't torture people, and then you wouldn't have to have psychologists to tell you to release them after you torture them. But their reason was not his innocence or his mental health, but the need to avoid potential long-term issues from headquarters. The CIA's Inspector General report confirms that el-Masri's prolonged arbitrary detention, cruel, inhumane, and degrading treatment included solitary confinement in a small cell with just a bucket for his waist. The report concluded that there was an insufficient basis to render and detain el-Masri, and the agency's prolonged detention of el-Masri was unjustified. His retention and long detention resulted from a series of breakdowns in tradecraft, process management, and oversight. The CTC and Redacted failed to take responsible steps to verify el-Masri's identity. The ALEC station exonerated the nature of the data it possessed linking el-Masri to terrorism. After the decision had been made to repatriate el-Masri, implementation was marked by delay and bureaucratic infighting. So literally, as they're torturing this man, right, it got delayed, his release got delayed because people were arguing, right? But the one thing I want to point out is some framing of this. Not that the ACLU did a bad job, but that no one should be tortured. I don't care who you are. You can't torture people, plain and simple. So This article goes on for another 5 paragraphs, but I am going to hop back over here and see where everyone's at with their threads, so that way we can continue on with the court proceedings. That was a disturbing thing to read at 7 o'clock in the morning. Let's see. 8 minutes ago, Kevin says, Assange's legal team has a statement from el-Masri, who survived a CIA kidnapping, torture, and rendition. Information related to these acts appears in diplomatic cables WikiLeaks published. The prosecutor objects. El-Masri's got nothing to do with these charges. So I believe we are still waiting. So I'm going to drop the latest in Kevin's thread over into the chat for everybody. And then we have Danielle Dunkley in chat asking 2004, was that George Tenet? Yes, that's what the article said. So let me... so recess is going on for an hour. I probably could finish that article then. I have this LA Times article, but I think that's just kind of a reference. So let me... Yeah, so we're going to be on break here for a little bit, and I think we're still waiting on Steve to hop in and join us here in a minute too. So what I'm going to do in the meantime is I'm actually going to pop up an article from the vigil last night that we didn't get to. And bear with me while I pull it up. This is about the UC Global case that's going on right now. And just in case anyone doesn't know, just to get everyone caught up a little bit, the UC Global case is happening in Spain, and it is showing and exposing how David Morales' company, UC Global, was working hand in hand with Sheldon Adelson to spy on Julian throughout the embassy. That's actually the court case where all of this is getting revealed. This article, and I'll read through it here for everyone, is about how the Spanish have made requests. The Spanish government has made requests for discovery of the CIA, and the short of it is the CIA said, well, we're going to need to know who your sources are. So the U.S. demands hinder Spanish probe into alleged CIA ties to security firm that spied on Assange. American prosecutors want to know the judge's sources before cooperating in an investigation into whether UC Global gave intelligence services sensitive material on Julian. There will be no judicial cooperation forthcoming from the United States unless a Spanish judge reveals his information sources into alleged espionage against WikiLeaks founder Julian Assange while he was living in the Ecuadorian embassy in London. The judge of Spain's High Court was sent a request from the judicial cooperation to U.S. authorities as part of his probe into the Spanish private security company named UC Global SL and its owner David Morales, on allegations that this firm secretly recorded Assange's private meetings with his lawyers, politicians, relatives, and journalists at the embassy, where he took refuge in 2012 to avoid separate legal proceedings, where he sought asylum. I believe that's the way that should be worded. This article, Steve and I talked about it when we first read the article. It's not framed terribly, but it doesn't say that Julian got asylum in the parts where it kind of should. But the judge asked the U.S. prosecutors for the IP addresses of computers and other network devices that allegedly connected from American soil to the servers in southern Spain. Morales was arrested a year ago and released pending trial, according to testimony from several protected witnesses and former UC Global workers who gave evidence in connection with the case. Morales provided the CIA with recordings, video material, and reports detailing the activities of the 49-year-old Australian journalist inside the diplomatic mission, where he lived until his eviction, until he was arrested after a $4.2 billion international monetary loan from in April 2019. The judge who is heading the probe into UC Global has asked the U.S. prosecutors for the IP addresses of the computers and other network devices that allegedly connected from American soil to the servers held by private security firm in its headquarters in southern Spanish city. In a southern Spanish city. I'm not going to try to pronounce that name. It's too early. That server stored all of the recordings made by the cameras at the embassy where UC Global was in charge of security, as well as reports drafted by company employees detailing each visit that Assange received, images of visitors' passports, and photographs of their cell phones and electronic devices. According to testimony by several ex-workers, as well as emails used as evidence in the investigation, the U.S. intelligence services allegedly had access to this central server. U.S. prosecutors have sent a letter to the judge, or have sent a letter to a liaison for the judge in Spain, for the Spanish judge in the U.S., asking her to convey their demands to the judge. These include showing proof that the requested IP addresses are relevant and substantial to the investigation. The document requests further details about the Spanish probe, including the sources of information for most of the assertions made at the request for judicial cooperation. The Spanish judge has been asked to answer a long list of questions regarding every aspect of his investigation, including who he believes Morales was providing information to, and whether the judge thinks Morales was working for a foreign information service or as an agent for a foreign power, and whether it was simply a case of bribery. The U.S. prosecutors have asked for all of this information to be relayed before October 16th. Otherwise, we'll assume the Spanish authorities are not interested, and the request will be shelved. The Spanish judge has been asked to answer a long list of questions regarding every aspect of his investigation, including who he believes Morales was providing information to. The alleged espionage against Assange by UC Global was revealed in 2019 by an El País investigation that uncovered numerous illegal recordings made while the WikiLeaks founder was living in the Ecuadorian embassy. Assange's defense later took legal action against Mr. Morales, who is a former member of the military, and against his corporation. Morales is being investigated for alleged violations of privacy and attorney-client privilege, as well as for bribery and money laundering. The journalist was illegally removed from the embassy after Ecuador withdrew his asylum and citizenship illegally, and since Assange has been held in London's high-security Belmarsh prison. He is fighting his extradition, his extraordinary rendition to the U.S., where he is wanted on 18 charges of espionage and computer misuse that carry a maximum penalty of 175 years.
We live in a cartoon.
Right? Like, I just think it's crazy that some dude in Ohio at 7 o'clock in the morning has to be the one that reads through the court trial stuff. Like, to me, that's nuts.
It's fucking cartoon.
It is. It's crazy. I'm going to see. I got to find Kevin Gastola real quick. I'm going to send him a link.
See if he wants to pop on.
Yeah, that's what I'm doing, because we got about half an hour still until court resumes. I need to just start a big group chat and send this link to everybody and just get like everyone that's typing about the court case in here all at the same time.
That ain't a bad idea, actually.
No, I wish I would have had it like 4 hours ago. Yeah,
man, they need to free this guy so we can get some sleep.
Right. But while we're waiting, I do want to talk about our call to actions. I know I talk about them a lot, and I haven't added a new one yet today. But if you go over to actionforassange.com, we do have a whole new list of call to actions that are up. If you've been on our site previously, you may need to just refresh your page because sometimes it's a little buggy and won't reload. The wonderful Josh is working on getting a new site put together for us.
The data size on downloading that front page is obnoxious.
Yeah, it's huge. Um, but so we
I
have, and
fixed
I'm getting
that.
them all open.
It's almost done.
The first one, I'll start at the back and work our way forward. We have the coordinated campaign we're doing with Reporters Without Borders to call for a congressional amendment to the Espionage Act, if not just completely removing the act itself. But they have information up on their website about a multi-point proposal that they want to put out, that they want candidates to put out. A lot of it involves not allowing journalists to be punished under the Espionage Act, not allowing whistleblowers to be punished under the Espionage Act, and allowing for an actual public interest offense, as well as like 8 more points, mainly focusing around the need to build a public dialogue and amend the Espionage Act itself. So I think I dropped that link in. Yep, I put that link in the chat already. The next one that we have is the contacting the Justice Department, and this is mostly just to educate them. Please be as respectful as possible with all of these while you're going through and doing them. We're not trying to burn bridges or make people angry. We're trying to make sure that they know what the hell's going on. So this one is actually a good reference to get some articles to share out to people. It has the open letter from hundreds of lawyers in support of Assange. It has Neil Smeltzer's statement declaring that Julian's treatment is torture. It has a list of and I believe maybe the contact information as well for the press freedom groups currently defending Julian. There's an article about the former editor of The Guardian who's speaking up for Julian Assange. And then there is the Council of Europe demanding the extradition of Julian to end. That is an older article, but it's still a good one. It gives people a point of reference. And then lastly, the Spanish UC Global trial about illegal surveillance in the embassy. I actually have a terrible spelling mistake on that one. The next one that we have, and this is probably the one that I find most important amongst all of them, and this is contacting the pardon office. I put it in there. Inside the action itself, it has the form you can go and fill out to submit information to the pardon attorney. It has the phone number for the U.S. Pardon Attorney's office, as well as his email address, which is uspardon.attorney.usdoj.gov. Please get involved with that. Please send at least one email to them, form submission, and phone call. If you're ambitious, send multiples. Don't just send the same email, though. Send different articles and a little summary of them, educating the pardon attorney about Julian's situation.
I mean, it couldn't hurt to send that Johnstone article that debunks like all the smears. Like we should add that.
I'll add that to the. I'll make a separate list of important information to share. But our most recent call to action that we updated and put out 2 days ago now is the abysmal technological incompetence. The UK court system has proven once again that it is unable to appropriately broadcast or conduct court in a way which is acceptable for the purposes of open justice, which open justice is a term that the British courts use over and over and over again. Barrister has said this word multiple times while referring to this show trial. So apparently what we're seeing is what British justice is. It is time to begin pressuring the courts for a live video feed and public view, as well as an open media and public gallery for any who wish to attend. The level of diligence shown by the courts is unacceptable and inappropriate, to say the least. Below is an email list of UK court complaint emails, which we have successfully pressured in the past. We demand this case be open, transparent, and in full public view. And if the court is unable to deliver such basic functions, the case itself must just be thrown out. So I'm going to drop this link here in chat. And also in there, I included the list of DOJ emails as well, if you would like to send them to them too, just to make that a little bit easier to reference. And then the last thing we have is just basically our ongoing call to action. Since we've started these vigils, we've asked everybody to be that one weird person in your city, to go out, to put up banners, to hang signs, to do flyering. If you want to tie yellow ribbons that say "Free Assange" to trees throughout your city, please do it. because we need decentralized action. We need individuals acting in accordance to what they feel is right in a way to spread this information. So we made what we call our action submission box. If you are not someone who is generally active on social media but still taking action, please send us pictures of them if you want. If not, please don't. But also, if you put anything out on social media that we may have missed and didn't get a chance to retweet, you can drop it in there too. This is just our way of making sure that we get to everybody that's doing actions right now. So please put them in there as you're going about them if you so choose. And then just to do a little DC recap, because I don't know if Steve's hopping on right now or not. This week, we are still going to the Department of Justice every single day as this trial unfolds. So we've had Kimber and a couple other people turning up out there. Kimber is our permanent on the ground person there right now, and we super appreciate that. I myself will be returning to DC most likely Friday. So I look forward to getting back out there because that was a lot of fun, and it is definitely better than sitting at a desk. Yeah. Let me see. I don't think we're back in session yet. No, it looks like everyone is still on break right now. So we got about 20 minutes of break left here in the court. So what I'm going to do is go run and use the bathroom real quick, and I will be right back with everybody. If you could throw up one of the little timer screens again, I'd appreciate it, Josh. Cool.
See you in a few, folks. We're live.
Hey, everybody. Welcome back to the third day of the second week of the second round of Julian Assange's extraordinary rendition hearing. With me right now, I do have Kevin Gostola. How are you doing, sir?
Doing well. It's been a pretty good morning with the proceedings. The witness was, I think, an important one, although he'll probably be overshadowed by Daniel Ellsberg later this afternoon. But I do think John Getz is a really important guy for WikiLeaks.
I agree. And most specifically, I hope that they actually get to introduce the statement by El Masuri into this. We read through an article by the ACLU about what had happened to him, and also in court they made some statements about him literally being sodomized on the way to being tortured, which I think is pretty disturbing, to say the least. Do you have any thoughts on kind of what was revealed today with Mr. Getz?
Yeah, no, I mean, I think he exposes how much of the narrative in the media is false about WikiLeaks being reckless with the documents. It's very clear that his value is, well, for one, you'll notice that James Lewis, the lead prosecutor, did not spend 3 to 4 hours with John Getz, because to spend time with him would have exploded this farce of a case entirely. It was clear following along, and you could probably see from the tweets, that Lewis did not understand the timeline of these publications at all. And while talking with John Getz, he wants to insist that WikiLeaks published the unredacted cables, but in fact, it's Luke Harding and David Lee in their book with the password. And Cryptome actually had the massive cache of cables on their website before WikiLeaks. And Freitag ran an article that was pointing people in the direction of the encrypted file, and just the timeline does not favor the U.S. government. And John was very clear about what happened. And I also think he was clear about how WikiLeaks cared about the security of the documents, was forcing these journalists to use encrypted communications in ways that they had not before to protect the information. And he withheld 15,000 documents in the Afghanistan war logs that were never published. And there's also the fact that the State Department was telling the Der Spiegel and other journalists that there were these cables that they didn't want published. And then I like the idea that John Getz was going back and like, what don't they want us to publish? Oh, these are just politically damaging ones. It's not really that there's people in them that we can't reveal. It's just that they don't like that we might publish stories about the information.
I thought it was that part was actually pretty funny, where halfway through talking with the US was like, maybe we shouldn't tell them everything.
Yeah, right.
So I thought that was pretty amusing, to say the least. But we have we're in a weird situation here where it seems like the head prosecutor has issues showing up on time, has issues conducting himself professionally, and has even started to have some issues with keeping track of everything and what's actually in the evidence logs and stuff like that. So I was wondering, because you've covered a lot of similar cases and cases in this same lineage, going all the way back to Chelsea Manning's trials. And when we had talked last week, I believe you were kind of comparing this to the way that Manning's trial was conducted. I think it was you that we had talked to. We had talked about, and that even the U.S. military gave Manning a more fair trial and better public openness and evidence revelations and everything than what the UK courts in the U.S. are doing. So with a couple of minutes that we have before you have to hop back into the call, could you talk a little bit about that kind of situation?
Yeah, so like what I see with the court is that the judge, first thing that's striking is like all the people who are trying to observe that are being kept out right now. We should keep them in mind, that there are still dozens of people who would like to be able to follow the proceedings that can't have access. And it's my experience with the U.S. military that they were really good about accommodating people We had a massive room that we were able to sit in, even though the court was small. So they opened up a media center so all those people from Amnesty International and would have had a seat to follow this along. I feel like the public process of this is actually shameful. One of the things is that the judge is talking about not letting the defense read into the record the Khalid al-Masri statement. And she's saying that, it's her idea is that it would be redundant because she's already going to read it. Well, that means that she has no respect for the fact that people in the public and the press are trying to follow along. And I don't know that the legal team's going to release Khalid al-Masri's statement to the press. Maybe they will after her decision if she decides that the defense can't read it into the record. But the fact that she isn't respecting open justice and allowing it to be read there into the record, and then when she realizes that she's in a position where the prosecutor isn't going to challenge her and she's going to have to make a decision on her own without the prosecutor challenging her, she was like egging them on to object to the statement so that she wouldn't just be ruling alone, so that she could be doing it for the prosecutor and then against the defense. So I didn't see anything like this in the military court-martial with Chelsea Manning. A lot of what I saw, if I objected to it, it still felt like it ran by a reasonable process. Like, I could understand it was coming out of the culture of the military. Almost everything that happened that was negative for Chelsea Manning, I knew that was the way it was going to be because of the negative culture of the U.S. military and what she was believed to have done.
And I think it's particularly disturbing that you can have a judge during all of these hearings leading up to this case speak so fervently about the need for open justice and the UK and the British traditions of justice and things like that, and then have the court case degrade to this point where you literally have a prosecutor yelling at the judge because his needs had already been more than exceeded and then was trying to get more out of it. Do you think that there's any possibility that the U.S. would essentially like hot swap judges and legal teams because of how poorly Lewis is actually doing?
You mean, would they pick a new prosecutor because he's not representing them well? Yeah, I don't know. I mean, so, the other thing that I felt like the U.S. government was always doing with James Lewis is trying to benefit from having that separation where this is a guy who's from the UK system. He's not an American. And so he can put a face on this that doesn't make it seem like it's just a act of Trump that's going after Julian Assange. And I don't know, you need that British guy with the flair of, and I mean, obviously I'm not suggesting they would find an American. The way this process works is to go to the Crown Prosecution Authority and to find somebody from the British legal system to do it. I don't know that they think he's doing that bad of a job. I mean, I just think that, like, by our standards, we're a little baffled, but he's probably doing all right by their standards. They just need him to show up every day and question the witnesses, and that's really all they need from him. And he's, so long as he doesn't blow the case by, like, for example, what would have been a bad choice on his part, I think, would be to press that cross-examination with John Getz and ask more questions, because it was clear that everything he was trying to say was wrong, that he didn't understand what happened. And if he had kept going with John, then it would have been a thing where we would have quickly seen the conspiracy theory that they're trying to weave fall apart on the part of WikiLeaks. But he didn't do that. I mean, John's one of those guys that can tell you all the things that they're saying about WikiLeaks are not true. Sorry.
You're good. But yeah, I thought that it was actually pretty interesting because Lewis generally, from these proceedings, has tried to, after he starts failing questioning, begin trying to discredit the credibility and expertise of the witnesses, and we didn't even see that.
Yeah.
but I think we are approaching the time where I have to let you go.
Yeah, I'll hop off and I'll drop by another time so that we can do some more updates.
Awesome.
All
Thank you very much, man. I appreciate it.
Thank you, Kevin.
That, everyone, was our friend, the good Kevin Gostola. And I would like to thank him for hopping on here. As court picks back up, I will continue reading through. I don't have a whole lot of time before I need to get off, but Steve may be hopping on later. And then if anything, we'll have Kevin Gostola on later this week again to talk about all this. So I am waiting here. This is a tweet by the Justice Campaign about el-Masri, and it says, Khalid el-Masri was subject to an extraordinary rendition by the CIA. El-Masri was beaten, stripped naked, deprived of food and water, and sodomized by the CIA run sand pit. So I'm going to drop this in there in the chat for everybody because I find it particularly disturbing that, to my knowledge, no one has been prosecuted. And according to what Getz was saying before, it was done intentionally, so that way no one could get in trouble by the way that they actually were trying to sue and take charges against the U.S. And it looks like we are waiting on everything to start gearing back up. I'm just to give you guys the links of everything I'm going through today. We have that, which is the Defense Assange. We have Mary Kostakidis, who always does a wonderful job. Juan Passarelli, and there are more people covering this than just the ones that I am putting in chat. These are just the 4 that I try to stay on top of. And then we also have Mohammed Al-Mazi, and his got closed when I opened up an article, so I have to grab his thread again real quick if you bear with me. And does anyone have any questions in chat about what's been happening so far? Because I don't mind answering them, because this is a pretty complicated and heavy situation that we're all trying to figure our way through right now. So this is Mo's thread too. Gina Haspel is a psycho. She is. It was funny, actually, to give a little story from the behind the scenes in DC. Just as we're waiting on everything to get started back up
Bloody
again.
Gina, dude. That's what they
Right?
call her.
We were sitting there after we went to the Department of Justice. We were sitting out back, just kind of talking and bullshitting, and just for shits and giggles. Oh no, this was Monday, actually. This was after the Lincoln Memorial. I Googled Gina Haspel just because there was someone that we had been interacting with that was acting in a certain particular set of ways. And I wanted to just see Gina's face compared to this person's. And it was not her, which is good because that would be fucking terrifying for Gina Haspel to come and kick it with you. But about 20 to 30 minutes later, after my phone was like screen off, in my pocket, everything, an ad starts playing on YouTube, which was Apple's ad about privacy that they've been running, and about how you need to secure your devices to make sure that none of your information gets exposed and some shit like that. So I thought that was particularly funny and particularly disturbing in its own right. I am trying to see here if we have any new tweets coming out from anybody yet, and it doesn't look like it. Mo's last tweet, now there is a discussion about publicly reading the statement from CIA torture and rendition victim el-Masri and other potential statements. Mr. Lewis thinks it is inappropriate. The judge says the USG, which I'm assuming is U.S. government, did not contest the statements. Break until 12:30. Which is a minute ago. So we should be having some more information come through soon. And again, if you guys could, make sure you're going through these Twitter threads that I just linked in the Action for Assange chat. So that way, this information does proliferate more. We got about 25 viewers on here and about 15 on Slow News Day. So we're at about 40 people actually knowing in real time what's happening, at least through audio version. So if you could share out these tweets, highlight important ones, just as we're going throughout this process, because as Julian said in a letter a long time ago, it's up to us to be his voice. We're the ones that have to carry what's happening forward. This literally feels like a fucking like 1920, 1930 radio broadcast right now, just reading through all of this and not being able to actually put it up on the screen to just show people. So please make sure this information gets out. Talk to your friends, talk to your family about it, as everything here is gearing forward. I just want to make sure that I have everything caught up. And let me see. I don't see any questions in the Slow News Day chat. Let me check. Bedroom Junkie says, backdoor Haspel, save it for the morning. There's really nothing better than a little waterboarding in the sea, going for a scuba, cleaning out the engine, and playing with the tuba. I don't know if you guys actually know this or not, but Gina Haspel, it got revealed in one of her torture reports that she was essentially writing her torture report as a form of erotica. And I thought that was particularly disturbing. So if you're someone that doesn't inherently mind reading things like that, it may be worth looking up because it is kind of fucked up and dark.
Why?
It's worth putting out there. Like, this is the person that's literally in charge of the CIA right now. It's terrible. And credit to Ray McGovern.
We live in a fucking cartoon.
Yep. Credit to Ray McGovern because he was one of the only people while Gina Haspel was getting appointed to CIA director to stand up and make a scene at that appointment about the torture programs. So thank you, Ray. I appreciate all the work that you do, even in your accelerating period of life. So let's see here. And I just want to say, if Ray McGovern can get out and interrupt events, other people can too. We still don't have any new tweets coming through about the court case yet. So let's see. I think we're still waiting on it to kick off, but there's no comment about if we're waiting on it to kick off right now or not. But it was a little over an hour ago that everybody went on to recess for this. So yep, we should be coming back anytime now. But while we're waiting, I know I've said it about two, maybe three times now, so I won't go through them. But we do have multiple call to actions up on the website. There will be more coming out. I just want to make sure that the ones we have out actually get proliferated. So if you could, please take those links for our calls to action over on actionforassange.com and share them out on social media yourself. Our reach only goes so far directly, but if you put them out, it helps grow the sphere. And ask others to put them out, just literally saying, hey, please join this call to action. Here's the link. It makes a big difference. It goes a long way to actually getting people involved in doing this. We have Mad Mom on 2. She said, they say, do we have any idea how many witnesses are left to testify? I don't know the exact number. There was a number thrown around earlier in the week of 39 still left to testify, I believe, but I'm not inherently sure, and that was a few days ago. Today, I believe the only other person to be an actual witness is Daniel Ellsberg. He will be taking the stand, and it will be interesting to see the way that Lewis goes about questioning him, whether he's going to just throw his hands up like he does with Getz, who I was calling Goats earlier. And
I didn't know his name either. It's all good.
Right. And it did say in a tweet that Jennifer Robinson was going to read some statements. So I'd be interested in hearing that too. But unfortunately, we aren't going to be able to hear it. We're only going to be able to read it. So that is the point that we are at in 2020 in two of the most technologically advanced countries that have ever existed. So let me just checking here to see if anything new has come through yet. And it doesn't look like it has. Yeah, it doesn't look like we have anything new coming out yet. The latest that we have is so just to give everyone a little update about how today went, because I am going to have to get off here in just a moment. Earlier today, this morning, we saw Getz get questioned by first the defense, and then the prosecution stepped in to do some questioning on him. And essentially the entire time, the prosecution ended up backing themselves into a corner. Prosecutor James Lewis didn't know what the hell he was talking about. He didn't know about the timeline for who released what leaks when. He was even falsely stating that the names of people in the cables were modified as strictly protected, where Getz literally says it was not the names that were strictly protected. It was the document, the cable in and of itself that was marked that way. So that was a very interesting distinction. And it literally got so bad that James Lewis, the prosecuting attorney for the U.S., basically just had to stop. He said, "I'm not questioning him anymore," and went and sat down. And that's surprising in a way, because most times once he fails considerably bad at getting the answers that he wants out of people, like for when Trevor Tim was being questioned last week, he tries to then pivot and discredit their credibility and their expertise and their expertness, like that's a word, and their position of perceived authority in the subject matter that they're talking about. So that's just to show, that's just how backed in a corner Lewis was with this witness, is he just had to throw his hands up because he wasn't even willing to try to do his normal bullshit of discrediting him, or attempting to, which generally also turns out pretty bad. So I hope that they caught on with that as well. So let me click through here and see if we have anything new. I don't think we do as of yet. So I don't know if court is back in session or not, because no one has made mention of it. But I want to give credit to the real heroes here, the real people that are doing the heavy lifting. And that's the people that are actually in the Cloud Video platform call, being able to listen live, and as it's happening, be able to type furiously and turn it into tweets with relatively good accuracy. So I want to give a special thank you to Kevin and Mary and Mo and Juan and everybody else. I think CN Live's covering it too. Simply because of how important this is, and people are doing a great job in actually going through and making sure this doesn't get missed. But with that, I do need to hop off now. Steve may be hopping in a little bit later to pick it up. But I would just like to thank everybody for watching. You can find us on Twitter at action_4 Assange. You can find us and all of our calls to action as well on action4Assange.com. And if the website doesn't look like it's up to date, just give it a refresh, because sometimes it gets stuck in the loading process. But we are working on fixing that, and Sleepy Josh is an amazing individual for doing it. Yeah, as Steve would say, good luck to us all.